everybody, thank you for joining us today. My name's Kate Morris and I work here at the Tasmania Museum and Art Gallery, and I'm here with Elspeth Wishart, who's TMAG's Senior Curator of Cultural Heritage. And Elspeth's going to talk to us today about some of the amazing buildings we have here on site in Hobart at the Tasmania Museum and Art Gallery. Hi Elspeth.
Hi Kate, thank you. All right, we're here outside the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery, and what people might not know is that the buildings that make up the museum are as significant, if not more so, than some of our collections. And today I'd like to share some of the history of the site with you. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and pay respect to the Tasmanian Aboriginal community as the traditional and original owners and continuing custodians of this land on which we gather today, and acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging. This was once the home of the Muwahina people, who lived here for thousands of years, coexisting in this place where the land and sea met. It's a significant place. The rivulet used to come down here and meet with the River Derwent, and provided an abundance of food and fresh water. However, in 1804, Lieutenant Colonel David Collins decided this area would be the location of Tasmania's first permanent European settlement after the failure of one on the eastern shore a year earlier. And camp was set up very close to here. The site today is home to a unique precinct of heritage buildings, which played a significant role in the early administrative, commercial and cultural history of Hobart and Tasmania. Behind me, the Commissariat Store is the oldest surviving public building in Hobart. But before the Commissariat Store was built, all stores were transferred from ships onto the adjoining Hunter Island. And Kate has an image of Hunter Island. The landscape looks somewhat different today, how it would have appeared then. Probably one of the major changes is the land reclamation. So a lot of the land in that image, the water, has now been all reclaimed and built over. So there's a great car park outside the museum. There are roads where once it was just water. Where I'm now standing was virtually the waterfront. There was a narrow sandy shore with the water just lapping a few metres away. There were tall eucalypt trees and dense tea trees, and around the corner there still stands a small sandstone bluff or escarpment, which was an important gathering place for the Aboriginal people, as evidenced by the large middens. There was a narrow spit of land which joined Hunter Island, and the Hobart rivulet discharged just by that. The ships would anchor out in the cove in the deep water, and the small lighters, which were smaller boats, would bring the goods up to the rivulet, to this complex of buildings, so they could securely store the goods. We might just wait for this helicopter to pass. Right overhead. Commissariat Complex was the centre for government regulation of incoming and outgoing goods. This area was just located down the road from the original government house, which, for those of you who know Hobart, was up Franklin Square and near the Hobart, where the Hobart Town Hall is today. So it was all a very significant administrative area. And in fact, the Governor's private secretary's cottage, which Kate has an image of, is within the museum precinct and is one of our buildings. It dates from post 1815 and survives today. And behind me is the Watergate Wall, and this was originally built in 1826 of brick and stone with a large arched entrance and 2 doors either side which are sentry guarded. The original entrance had an impressive triangular pediment, and Kate has an image of that. And it was known as the Watergate because obviously it looked out to the water, the rivulet and the Sullivan's Cove. In 1870s, the entrance was changed. The wall had to be rebuilt, and so it took on a different appearance to what it was originally. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, Hobart suffered a massive storm and flooding, and this has meant that the wall has become unstable, and we're currently doing some works to secure that. This means we're unable to show you the entrance to the vaults under the wall, but if you go back to that image that Kate has, there are 2 small entranceways you can just see to the right of the bond store, just here, and they were the entrance to the vaults which are underground. And these were once storerooms. Of course, the land has completely changed due to the reclaiming of the land, so the levels are all different, but there was a ramp that went from the sandy spit down into those vaults. This image might give you a bit of an idea. So you've got the large bond store here. We're outside here. Those vaults were just the top of the lintels could be seen above the ground as it is today. So we've had some excavations done over the years, and you can see in these images, during those excavations we confirmed the presence of the vaults. They were structurally unsound and filled in not long after their initial use. So the vaults are about 12 metres long, 5 metres wide, and there were 2 of them with arched brick vaulting. A lot of those bricks collapsed in, and today they're filled with rubble. But I think now might be a good time if we go into the courtyard and have a look and see what we can see in there. So now we're on the inside of the courtyard. We're on the other side of the Watergate Wall, where you can see we've got our stabilisation issues happening here. But we might go and have a look in the most recent excavation that was done as part of those works. So there are remnants of the old vault sandstone walls. We can see some sandstone that would have formed part of the entry point to those vaults, and there's a lot of remnants of bricks that would have collapsed from those vaults. also, if we have a look in the stratigraphy, which is one of the wonderful things about archaeology, you get a sense of the layers. I'll just get down in the trench, and if you look closely you can see lots of different coloured soil layers. So you have the early soil layers right up to today's surface, but you can see the different changes. You can see the brick layers coming in, but also remnants of slate here, which would have probably come off the roof of the bond store building. And that all helps to build up a picture of what was here earlier. This area also had a large shed that was a lean-to, and there are remnants of that wall where it was attached to the actual Watergate Wall. And there were also 4 cesspits in this area, which are really toilets, and they were all filled in. We can see a plan that Kate has, and this shows the wall and the 3 buildings. We have the wall and the 3 buildings in this courtyard, and we might go outside of this compound and just have a look at those buildings. That plan was an 1829 one. So the 3 buildings it shows is the Commissariat Building, an earlier building that was in the place of this Queen's Warehouse, and the bond store. So this building that was replaced in 1869 when the Commissariat Complex was taken over from the British Imperial control to the colonial government, and was also used for customs purposes. It's a 2-storey brick warehouse, but little of the interior remains from those times. It served as an additional bonded store, and basically remained relatively unchanged until the 1950s when the Commonwealth government took over. The museum acquired this complex in the 70s, and it became part of the museum services. The Commissariat Store that I mentioned before is one of Australia's earliest public buildings, built in 1808 to 1810. It was built as a 2-storey brick warehouse and was used to house the colony's foodstuffs and supplies, as well as office space for the Commissariat department. The upper floor was used as a loft for dry, light materials such as hay. And the lower floor functioned as a provision store. It was used both as the receiving and issuing store, and that was a pivotal role in the economy, both of imported and local goods, and also provided food for the poor, and was a supply, issuing supplies also to the convicts. In 1811, James Meehan mapped the Hobart town, and this building was used to align the main streets of Hobart. So Macquarie Street, which is on the other side of the Commissariat building, is parallel to this building, and then the rest of the Hobart streets took their cue from that. After Federation in 1901, the whole complex became part of the Customs Service. Over time, this building has changed quite a bit. When the Queen's Warehouse was built, this building was lowered so the roof aligned It's had a series of changes with windows and doorways, and the external appearance is quite different to how it originally was. By the 1820s, the colony had outgrown this building and needed to plan for a new storage facility. And this is when the bond store was built. 1824 to 1826, and it was probably designed by David Lamb. It's also a very important example of an early colonial warehouse design. And we have an image of it from the other side, from the waterfront, that was drawn in 1848 by Charles Stanley. And it also shows that private secretary's cottage just to the left of the building. So here's the Georgian bond store with a small cottage sitting up on that escarpment that we mentioned earlier. So with the bond store, it is actually, you can see in that image that it is 4 floors, but from this side of the building it only appears to have 3 floors. And those 3 top floors were used for storing the dry goods, mainly the grain. And the lower 4th level was, which is completely underground now because of the land reclamation, would have been used for the bonded goods, so the spirits, which were no longer stored in the vaults, which were below this courtyard. They would have all come in through the entrance on the water side of the bond store building. It was also aligned, like the roadway, with the Commissariat Building, which conveniently made a nice courtyard with this other building that was built. A lot of those goods that were stored here were spirits and tobacco, which attracted taxes, and hence the term bond store, because a bond was held until the fees were paid. So those goods could be released to those who wanted them. Of course, spirits and tobacco at that time were very highly valued and much sought after, so needed secure storage. And then when the Commonwealth took over, a later addition was added. We can go up closer to the bond store and we can see this structure of a hydraulic lift. When the customs took over this building, they built, you can see another building which wrapped around the bond store, and that meant access to the building was changed considerably. So this hydraulic lift, which was operated from the Hobart water supply, meant that they could access all levels of the bond store. The building is largely unaltered, and I think maybe we should go inside and have a look and just get a sense of what this old building was like. So here we are in the bond store, wonderful colonial warehouse, 1824, 1826. You can see the big timber poles, the timber ceilings that are whitewashed. We're on the second level at this moment, which is at ground level. The original flooring is all here, beautiful timber with a few gaps underneath. And we also have spaces where the original trapdoors, where barrels were rolled down into the basement. One of the interesting features that goes right through every level of this building is the graffiti, and this was left by the Customs House staff in the 20th century and also the late 19th century. And very interesting with their names, names of employees, names of or dates when people retired, and also some of the dates of their children's births. And they are spread throughout the building. And when we restored this, we felt it was an integral part to keep it as part of the heritage of the building. That's probably all we've got time for today, but there's much more we can show you about our buildings, and so until next time, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Elspeth. That was really fascinating. I've worked at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery for quite a long time now, and you taught me so much that I didn't know about these buildings that I see nearly every day. So thank you very much. It was. I'm looking forward to hearing some more about the cottage and some other aspects of the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery's buildings. So thank you. I'd also like to thank the Friends of the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery for supporting our mystery tours at midday on Wednesdays, and we look forward to seeing you again next week at the same time. Thank you.